Good day. It's a beautiful Friday. How you doing? Hope you're having a great day. Enjoying the music, staying safe, happy, and healthy out there. Starting, and of course, comfortable, warm, cool, whatever. Comfy. Comfy cozy. How you doing? It's a beautiful day. Chuckles here with you. We've got all kinds of great stuff coming up throughout the day today. It is, of course, Phone It In Friday. Of course, then again, most days this month have felt kind of like Phone It In Friday, haven't they? Started the recording first. I'm going to start the stream. Ask you guys to bear with me while we get that all set up and get everything working the way it's supposed to be. I hope. We'll see. We'll see how this all works. Sometimes everything seems to work okay. Other times it gives me a real hard time, man. So here we go. Get the stream kicking. Then we'll start the radio show here in just a few minutes. 1, 2, 3. Looks like all but one connected. Yeah, it sounds about right. For some reason, Rumble, it did this yesterday too, and I'd like to get them both working but for some reason yesterday it did not want to connect correctly for the first little while. I'll go over here and do this. Da, 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 da. That's not what I wanted. Yeah, see, it's error failed to connect. Not sure why. Might be that. Try again now. Aha. Looks like it connected just fine now that I had a stream set up for tomorrow for some reason. And I guess it was confusing the computer because it was looking for me to connect tomorrow, not right now. So now we should be good. Welcome to those on Rumble. Let's see if we can get. It looks like Facebook's ready to go. It's kind of funny when Facebook isn't the most complicated thing I have to do in a day. Because I'm just used to that. So we are going to talk. We are going to still conversate about what we were talking about yesterday. It is Phone It In Friday. So if you have something you'd like to phone in, a comment, question, please feel free. And we're going to do Phone It In Friday in kind of a couple of parts. We're going to do this video now, and we're going to do the radio show. We're going to go the whole way through the radio show. We're going to do a little bit, a little bit of talk. I don't know, specifically about what. I do have a couple of email questions that some folks sent me. Going to go through those here sometime through our radio show. So I hope you'll stick around for that. I keep forgetting I moved that camera. Trying to get this so that we have the best kind of coverage that we can have as far as I want to be looking at you, not talking off while I'm looking in other directions. But since I don't have anybody to do the setup and the producer, since I don't have a producer, or a second computer for them to produce from, so it wouldn't matter anyway. Even if I did have somebody who was willing to do it, I'd have to set something up so we could do it. But since we don't, we're just going to kind of stick with how we've been doing things. And I know that means I look away from the screen, from the camera a bit. But if you didn't know better, you might think I knew what I was doing. But luckily for you, you know better. Looks like everything's up, running, and working okay. That's awesome. Now let's just go to our emails. And we will get started. I forgot to pour myself a cup of coffee, so I'm going to do that too. How's your day been? How's your week been? How's your year been, man? We're like more than halfway through. Kids are all back in school, or for the most part, kids are all back in school, which I found interesting. My daughter said something about before she goes to work today because she's going to work at, I think, 4, and her friend's supposed to come over. And she's like, oh, Mom. She told her mom she wanted to go pick up her friend before taking her to work. And then Sue and I were talking last night, and it was like, wait, I thought they were back in school. If they're back in school, they won't be available until after like 4, right? And she was like, I don't know. I was like, well, did you ask her? Did she think about it? Does she still think it's summer? Summer's over, baby. And no, there's no PSL season for me. No pumpkin spice latte for the chuckles. It's all uh, black coffee. Maybe a couple of Splendas. That's about it. That is not just about it. That's it. That's all I do. All right. Coffee wise, that's all I do. Put this over here so I don't end up spilling it. I like to set the coffee over here away from the computer because I'm a klutz. I'd end up spilling it. What do you want to talk about for Phone It In Friday? Shoot me a text right now, 814-651-8865. If you have something that you would like to discuss, a question, a comment, whatever, man, shoot me a note right now, 814-651-8865, and we'll do just that. While we're waiting to hear from you, we'll do a little talking on the radio, and maybe I'll answer a couple of emails. If it all works. Yeah, there we go. 100 miles, that's Crowder here on GodsLoveLive.com with Chuckles. In the afternoon, what a beautiful afternoon it is. I hope you're having a great day so far on this beautiful Friday, August 23rd. This is the day the Lord has made. Will you rejoice with me and be glad in it? Will you rejoice with me and be glad in it? I wanted to read something. I found this amusing. I guess that's right. Not really funny amusing, just kind of amusing. I was watching a comedian the other night, Jeff Allen. He's one of my favorites. And he's talking about when he was brought to the Lord, how it was kind of like, it was really a miracle, just waiting to happen. He said he was struggling with alcohol issues. He thought that he was going to lose his wife, but he didn't know what to do about it. He had all this stuff going on, and he was just in a bad spot. And he ends up running into this other comedian, this guy that's really rich, just does the comedian thing because he kind of enjoys it. Does the comedian thing because it's kind of a hobby for him. He said, here we are, we're rolling up on the bus with our bologna sandwiches, and this guy's, pulling in this fancy whatever. He said what type of car it was. I don't remember what it was, but he's like this fancy car. And he says he's doing these gigs for, $100 or something, just gas money because he's just doing it for fun. He says, here I am. Yeah, I'm your headliner. He wasn't a very good comedian, but he really enjoyed it, and they did a bunch of shows together and really kind of clicked. And he said he didn't really care for the guy, but they kind of started talking and whatever. And he says then he finds out the gentleman had memberships to some of the most exclusive golf clubs throughout the country, and Jeff's a big golfer, so he's like, he wants to make friends. He wants to make, really make a connection with this guy. He's like, I want to be my friend, man. So they're golfing. And Jeff said over a period of time, this guy kept talking to him about the Lord. And Jeff said, I'm an atheist. And the guy, okay, tell me what part of the Bible you're having trouble with. Maybe we can discuss it. Maybe I can help you understand it. Oh, I've never read the Bible. And I guess the guy looked at him. He's like, well, then you're not an atheist. You're a moron. What? How can you dismiss something like that without ever having read it? You all of these great thinkers throughout history, some of them have actually, read the Bible, looked into it, decided it's not true, but they've read the entire thing. They've done some, research. They've talked to people. They've done it. And I've heard this before. He's not the first person to have mentioned this fact that, you just decide you don't believe one of the most confirmable documents in world history because, well, why? Why? Give me a reason. Let's talk about that reason. There's an entire field of study, apologetics, that is specifically for that. Look at somebody like Lee Strobel, who started out with the intent to prove that Christianity was a lie and there was no God, and get his wife out of what he thought was, she's getting wrapped up in that Christian thing. He got all worried. He's like, I got to get her out of there. So he went, and Lee Strobel, he's a, what do you call it, investigative journalist. He went and did his investigative journalist job, or at least tried to prove that this thing wasn't true. And yeah, he wrote The Case for Christ, one of the most prolific books for, and a couple other things. He wrote some other stuff, but The Case for Christ, one of the most prolific arguments for the fact that Jesus is real and that God does exist, that I think that I've seen next to the Bible. And people say to me all the time, I've got friends who are non-believers. They're like, I don't understand how you can believe this, da-da-da-da-da. And I go through and I tell them and I show them the things that, it's not that I tell them a great deal of stuff. There's some videos that I have picked up along the way that when I saw them, I was like, wow, that really explains that well. That really explains this well. So anyway, the guy tells Jeff, you're not an atheist, you're a moron. And he kind of floored him, and he's like, oh, listen, if I sign you up for some Bible tracts, some cassette tapes that you could maybe listen to, and maybe just give it a chance, just give it a listen. And Jeff, not wanting to lose his access to these wonderful golf clubs, he just kind of played along. Yeah, sure, whatever. So he ends up, the guy signs him up, and he starts getting these tapes every week, and he's throwing these tapes in his office every week. After a great deal of time, his wife walks into the office one I think he said Friday, and she says, I'm leaving. I'm going, taking the kids. I think he said to her sisters, or maybe to her mothers, whatever. We're going to go for the weekend, and you need to figure out what the hell you're doing, because I don't want to see this just all fall apart, whatever. And this was like drop dead for him. Like, now, if you don't do something, you're looking at divorce. And he thought he was looking at divorce. He didn't think there was any way he could come back from where he was at. Like I said, he was suffering with an alcohol issue. He was on the road all the time because he's a comedian, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So as she's leaving, there's these cassettes just laying all over the place because he's been tossing them there, basically ignoring them. She's like, do something with these. Either listen to them or get rid of them. I don't want to see it all laying around. It's just a nightmare. It's a mess. Just get rid of it. Either listen to it or get rid of it. Whatever you're going to do something. He said, so there he was. He didn't have a gig or anything, so he's kind of stuck with himself for the weekend. Wife and, I think, kid left. Or maybe their kid had already grown. I don't remember. But anyway, wife and kid left. He's stuck there at the house. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's a pretty decently famous comedian. He was funny. He is funny. But he looked down, and he said, and he saw, these cassettes, and he kind of fought the urge, and he'd been fighting the urge for months, the call to listen to him, and finally he stuck one in. He's like, all right, that's it. And he said, I stuck in Ecclesiastes. And when he says that, I immediately thought, wow, what a random cassette tape to pick and stick in. And he said that when he heard these words being read, verse 2 of Ecclesiastes 1, he said he didn't know what, like it just floored him. Meaningless, says the teacher, utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. This is written by Solomon, son of David, king of Jerusalem, a man who was granted anything he wants. Lord, give me anything you want. The Lord said, I'll give you anything you want. And Solomon said, give me wisdom He asked for wisdom, not money, not women, not things. He asked for wisdom. And the Lord said, not only will I give you that, but I'm going to give you great riches because you asked for wisdom. We all hear the story about they take the child to Solomon talking about, this is my kid, this is my kid. And he's like, I would cut it in half because he knew the real mother would allow that or wouldn't allow that. She would give up the child before she would allow the child to be cut in half. Solomon, the wisest of wise kings ever to rule over Jerusalem, says, meaningless, meaningless. Utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. He goes on in verse 3, what do people gain from all their labors at which they toil under the sun? Generations come and generations go, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun sets and hurries back to where it rises. The wind blows to the south and then turns to the north. Meaningless, meaningless. Everything is meaningless. The first time I ever read that when I was a child, I thought, that's depressing. Why was Solomon so depressed? As I grew, of course, I came to the understanding and the conclusion that no, what it is he's recognizing that all of the things that we toil in labor for, fancy car, pretty house, blah, 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 all of these things are meaningless because none of it will last. This is years before Jesus said, do not store up your treasures in heaven. Centuries. And Solomon, the wisest of wise, is going, this is all meaningless. And as you read through the book, and you have to read through the entire book of Ecclesiastes, which is why I don't know that I want to get deep into that on a Phone It In Friday. But as you read through the book, chapter 2, the NIV, pleasures are meaningless. Chapter 1, the second half, the title is Wisdom is Meaningless. Wisdom and folly are meaningless. Toil is meaningless. And then we go into chapter 3. There's a time for everything and a season for every activity under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. You might recognize this. It's a pretty famous song. A time to plant and a time to uproot. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to tear down and a time to build. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to scatter stones and a time to gather them. And it goes on. We're not going to go on here on the radio. We're going to get back to the music. But I want to tell you that if you want to hear more, stick around. We'll be back. Right now, Andrews Blackwood and Company coming up right after a word from our friends at Brothers Pizza.
Mom, when's pizza night?
Every night is pizza night. I couldn't help it. I couldn't help myself because, yeah, that's me. So we look at that and we wonder why this wise king of Israel, who obviously had a pretty good life, right? I mean, not just once he became king, but he was the prince. So the prince under David, he was David's son. It's like, man, David's son, he grew up as Prince of Israel. You know, you think, how's this guy, why would he be so depressed? Why would he think everything is so meaningless? Well, it's not depressive. I would argue a couple of things. Number one, it's not really depression. It just recognizes that toil is meaningless. That's towards the end of chapter 2. It recognizes that there is a time for all of these different things. You get down past the time for. There's a time for war and a time for peace. What do workers gain from their toil? I've seen the burden God has laid on the human race. He has made everything beautiful in its time. He has also set eternity in the human heart, yet no one can fathom what God has done from the beginning to the end. I know that there's nothing better for people than to be happy and to do good while they live, that each of them may eat and drink and find satisfaction in all their toil. This is the gift of God. That we find satisfaction in the things that we're doing. That is the gift from God. Verse 15 goes, whatever is has already been, and what will be has been before, and God will call the past to account. Now, as you're reading this, and the last time I read it was a few months ago, and I didn't get all the way through it. I think I got through like chapter 5 or 6 or something, just like to the beginning of it. It's not that there's a whole lot. It's just it kind of brings you down for the most part. It really does. But then you kind of start to see if you're reading it from a place of understanding. Now, here's the thing: Solomon wrote this without. He might have had knowledge of the messianic prophecies, but he didn't have the knowledge we have of Christ coming and doing all that he did and giving all that he did for us. So when you read this, if you read it from an idea of understanding that Christ came and gave us a meaning. Also, the meaning, if you look at the end of the book, remember your Creator while you're young. End of verse 11. It's funny because in 11:6, sow your seed in the morning, and at evening let your hands not be idle, for you do not know which will succeed, whether this or that, whether both will do equally well. It's titled, chapter 11 is titled, Invest in Many Ventures. It's Solomon saying, try a lot of things, do a lot of things. In verse 8, or in chapter 8, obey the king. Whoever obeys his command will come to no harm, and the wise heart will know the proper time and procedure for all these things. So what he's doing is he's setting up everything is meaningless. Well, then God, because without God, and I have to come to the the same conclusion, and I do definitely agree with Solomon in this statement that everything is meaningless without God. The conclusion of the matter, verse 12, verse 9, not only was the teacher wise, but he also imparted knowledge to the people. He pondered and searched out and set in order many proverbs. The book of Proverbs. The teacher searched to find just the right words that he wrote, and what he wrote was upright and true. The words of the wise are like goads. They're collected, sayings like firmly embedded nails, given by one shepherd. Be warned, my son, of anything in addition to them, of making many books. There is no end, and much study wearies the body. Now all has been heard. Hear the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commandments. For this is the duty of mankind. He said duty. Of all mankind, for God will bring every deed into judgment, every hidden thing, including every hidden thing, whether good or evil. Everything will come into judgment. So we tend sometimes to look at that and be like, well, we're not going to have to worry about judgment because we're covered. No, judgment will take place for everything and everyone. Everything we've done, and all of us will be judged. The difference is someone who is a follower of Christ and has repented and has reconciled with the Lord, when they get to the punishment part of the judgment, because you remember, judgment is a two-part thing. The judge pronounces you guilty, and then comes your punishment. This is how we understand it. I am not trying to say this is exactly how it's going to work with God. I am saying this is how we understand it, and he is using words. God used men to write the Bible, to put together the scripture, to give us all this information. And since that's the case, we have to understand that there are things that are going to be outside of our actual understanding of how reality itself works. But there are also things that God explained in a certain way so that we could kind of look at them based on our systems and go, okay, how's this work? The judge would pronounce guilt and then punishment. Once the judge decided you were guilty of something, then the punishment would be decided upon. So when judgment comes, in that column under punishment, I picture it like there's a book, God's got names in it, and he's going to look at the name and he's going to go, Tommy, here's all the sins that you committed. Here's all the iniquities that you had, the shortcomings, the etc. Here's everything. And like I said, it might not work this way, but this is kind of how I see it now. You are guilty of all these things, Thomas. Yes, Lord, I know. I'm sorry, Lord. It was hard. All right, let's check out. What's your punishment going to be? Hold on, let's look here. Oh, wait a second. Because in the punishment column already, for those of us who are repented and reconciled with the Lord, it says, covered by the blood. Covered by the blood. That's what it says for those of us who are already repentant, who are already followers of Christ, who are servants of God through his Son, Jesus Christ, who have been, as I said, covered by the blood. We've been covered by the blood. So in our punishment column, purchased by the Lamb, covered by the blood, however you want to put it, that's what we're going to see. That's what God's going to see. You know, if like I said, I'm not saying that that's exactly how it works. I'm just saying that I could really kind of picture that, you know? All right, let's get this hour done, and we'll move into the next hour. This is Phone It In Friday with Chuckles on God's Love Live. Gaither Vocal Band, Jesus Messiah, here on God'sLoveLive.com with Chuckles. This beautiful afternoon. I hope you're having a great day. I hope you're enjoying the music, staying safe, happy, healthy, warm, cold, whatever out there as fall rolls in kind of a little bit. August is, we're getting that chill at night. Do you love that? So we were talking about, I do. We were talking about Ecclesiastes, and we were talking about meaningless. Everything is meaningless. And on the video, after the last break and up until now, I discussed a lot from the rest of that book of Ecclesiastes, and the idea, which I'm going to just kind of surmise for you guys here, because I don't want to go watch the video. It's part 1 of Phone It In Friday for 8/23. Go watch the video. But as I'm looking at it, as I'm looking at Ecclesiastes, I went through this a while ago myself, because you kind of look at it and you go, okay, this is really kind of a Debbie Downer thing. You get to the end, and he comes up with the conclusion of the matter. And I guess I shouldn't have closed my Bible, because I did want to read the conclusion of the matter in Ephesians 12. It starts in verse 9. We'll read the whole thing. Not only was the teacher wise, but he also imparted knowledge to the people. He pondered and searched out and set in order many proverbs. The teacher... This makes me wonder if Solomon actually wrote this, because it's almost, if it was Solomon, he's kind of writing in the third person, which is weird, but it might have been that somebody else wrote this part for him. It's also somebody possible, I guess, somebody else wrote this, and it's just credited Solomon. That's a thing. Although I think, if nothing else, we're pretty certain it started with Solomon, even if it was finished by someone else. Anyway, the conclusion of the matter. The words of the wise are like goads. They are collected sayings, like firmly embedded nails given by one shepherd. Be warned, my son, of anything in addition to them. Of making many books there is no end, and much study wearies the body. Now all has been heard. Here is the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind. For God will bring every deed into judgment, including everything hidden, whether good or evil. And everything will be brought into judgment. Everyone will be brought into judgment. And that was our next conversation, is that I conclude with that even those of us who are believers and followers of Christ, we are going to stand in front of the judge. We are going to be somehow, confronted for all of our iniquities. Everything hidden will be seen, will be brought out, good or evil. Will be shown. Here's all your good, here's all your evil, here's da 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 da. The difference for believers versus people who are unbelievers is when they get to the judgment part, the punishment part of the judgment. Here's what you're guilty of. We got you right here on video. There's no real debate of whether or not you're guilty. We can see it clear as day. The judge is going to pronounce guilt. You're guilty. All right, punishment. Oh, in the punishment column, it's got covered by the blood, purchased by the Lamb. Belongs to Messiah. I don't know how it's going to say it. I don't know that it's going to actually look like that, but I imagine we can kind of imagine it's going to look that it's something like that, because that's what's going to happen. Our wrongs are wrongs. We're still screwing up to this day. When we screw up, when we struggle with something, it is a fact. It is a thing. They will be remembered no more when forgiven. And that is that remembered no more. There's a big difference between they will be remembered no more, especially when you look at the root words, than forget. Forgive and forget. We hear forgive and forget a lot based on that. Your sins will be remembered no more. Their sins will be remembered no more, spoken by the prophet, or spoken by God to the prophet. We tend to think that means forgive and forget, and that God will forget. Well, he didn't forget. He's God. You can't forget. No, they will be remembered no more. What does that mean? Well, being remembered no more is if my wife and I have an argument and 5 months later we have another argument and I bring up 5 months ago argument, I'm remembering it, aren't I? That's what I think, that when you look at the root words, what it really means is I'm not going to bring it up. I'm not going to throw it in your face. You're not going to be punished for this ever again. There's no need, or ever, because there's no need for us to be punished. The punishment that brought us peace, Isaiah 53:5, the punishment that brought us peace was placed on him. He took it on himself. It's Phone It In Friday, man. You got to know this is going to be all day long. Stick around. You're listening to God's Love Live. I'm Chuckles. You're listening to God'sLoveLive.com. Oh, man. All right. I wanted to try to get the whole 12 o'clock hour in